Summer is here, and everything you need for adventure is waiting at shockshop.us. Gear up with camping essentials, stylish bathing suits for fun in the sun, reliable generators for every outdoor trip, kayaks, dinghies, and water toys for non-stop excitement. From backyard fun to lakeside escapes, shackshop.us has it all. Shop the summer sale now and save big at shackshop.us.
Inside Britain's information war, the secretive government unit at the centre of a growing debate over public narratives, extremism, and social tension introduction. A hidden battle beyond the headlines. When disorder erupts on city streets, most people focus on what unfolds in plain sight. Television cameras capture confrontations between protesters and police officers. Social media fills with images, accusations, and competing interpretations of events. Politicians issue statements, community leaders appeal for calm, and journalists race to explain what happened. Yet behind these highly visible developments, another struggle often unfolds beyond public view. In Britain, that quieter battle has increasingly become the subject of scrutiny. At the centre of it is a little-known government organisation whose mission is not to arrest suspects, patrol neighbourhoods, or write legislation. Instead, its role involves understanding, influencing, and sometimes attempting to shape public reactions to crises before tensions spiral further. The organisation is known as the Research, Information and Communications Unit, commonly referred to as RICU. For years, the unit operated largely outside public awareness. Most citizens had never heard its name. Even many political observers remained unfamiliar with its activities. But a series of controversies, reports, leaked documents, and public debates have gradually drawn attention to its work. Supporters argue that organisations like RICU are essential tools in an age when extremist groups, foreign actors, and online agitators can spread inflammatory messages across digital platforms within minutes. They contend that governments must possess sophisticated methods to counter dangerous propaganda and prevent violence. Critics see something very different. They argue that a government body tasked with influencing public narratives carries significant risks for democratic societies. They question whether efforts designed to combat extremism can gradually evolve into attempts to manage political opinion, suppress uncomfortable discussions, or influence public discourse in ways citizens neither recognise nor consent to. These concerns have resurfaced amid recent unrest in Northern Ireland, where anti-immigration demonstrations and violent disturbances triggered renewed discussion about how authorities respond not only to events themselves, but also to public perceptions surrounding them. The debate touches on fundamental questions about freedom of speech, government transparency, national security, immigration, social cohesion, and public trust. And as Britain continues to grapple with increasingly polarised debates over identity and migration, the role of institutions operating behind the scenes has become more controversial than ever. The origins of a modern information strategy. To understand why RICU exists, it is necessary to revisit the security climate of the early 21st century. The terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001 dramatically altered security thinking across Western nations. Governments suddenly faced a challenge that extended beyond traditional law enforcement or military operations. Officials became increasingly concerned about radicalisation. The question confronting policymakers was no longer simply how to stop attacks, it was how to prevent individuals from embracing extremist ideologies in the first place. Britain faced particular pressure after several major terrorist incidents involving individuals who had lived, studied, or grown up within the country. The government began developing strategies aimed at identifying pathways to radicalisation and disrupting extremist recruitment efforts. This broader effort eventually became known as PREVENT, one pillar of the United Kingdom's counter-terrorism framework. PREVENT sought to stop individuals from becoming involved in terrorism before crimes occurred. The strategy emphasised community engagement, education initiatives, and efforts to challenge extremist narratives. Within that environment, officials recognised the growing importance of communication. Extremist organisations were proving highly effective at spreading messages online. Recruitment videos, propaganda materials, social media campaigns, and ideological content could reach audiences instantly. Government leaders feared they were losing the battle for influence. Rather than responding solely through policing measures, they sought a dedicated capability focused on communications and information operations. That effort led to the creation of RICU. Established within the Home Office, the unit was tasked with researching extremist messaging, understanding how narratives spread, and developing methods to counter them. Initially, its mission appeared relatively straightforward: Officials wanted to identify messages that encouraged radicalization and create alternative narratives that could weaken extremist appeal. Few people objected to that goal. The controversy emerged later as the scope of information campaigns expanded and critics began questioning where the line should be drawn between countering extremism and shaping public opinion. The expanding mission government agencies rarely remain static. Programs often evolve in response to changing threats, new technologies, and political priorities. RICU was no exception. Over time, the communications environment transformed dramatically. The rise of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, encrypted messaging services, and countless online forums altered how information spread through society. Traditional media organizations no longer held a monopoly on public discourse. Instead, narratives could emerge from virtually anywhere. A single post could trigger national debates. A viral video could influence public opinion before authorities had even verified basic facts. For organizations focused on public messaging, this new reality presented enormous challenges. According to public discussions surrounding the unit, RICU gradually expanded beyond monitoring jihadist propaganda and responding to terrorism-related narratives. Observers say its work increasingly addressed broader forms of extremism and social division. This expansion reflected wider government concerns. Officials worried not only about Islamist terrorism, but also about rising political polarization, conspiracy theories, violent extremist networks, and various forms of ideological radicalization. The challenge was defining what constituted a legitimate security threat. Supporters of broader intervention argued that governments must adapt to changing risks. Critics worried that expanding definitions could eventually encompass ordinary political disagreements. That tension continues to shape debates over RICU's activities today. The information battlefield. Modern conflicts are not fought exclusively with weapons. Information itself has become a strategic resource. Governments worldwide now devote substantial resources to understanding how narratives influence public behaviour. Military planners discuss information warfare. Security agencies analyse influence operations. Technology companies invest heavily in content moderation systems. Political campaigns employ sophisticated messaging strategies informed by behavioural science. Within this environment, organisations like RICU occupy a unique position. Rather than engaging directly in public debate, they operate behind the scenes. Their objective is often described as influencing the information environment rather than dominating it outright. Supporters argue that such efforts are necessary because hostile actors already exploit online platforms. They point to extremist recruiters, foreign disinformation campaigns, organised propaganda networks, and individuals seeking to inflame social divisions. In their view, governments that fail to engage in information battles risk surrendering the field entirely. Yet critics remain sceptical. They argue that when governments begin actively shaping narratives, transparency becomes essential. Without transparency, citizens may struggle to distinguish between independent public discussion and state-influenced messaging. The concern is not merely theoretical. Democratic societies depend on informed public debate. Any perception that authorities are secretly guiding discussions can undermine trust. As a result, organisations involved in strategic communications often face difficult questions about accountability. Who decides which narratives deserve promotion? Who determines which ideas represent dangerous extremism? How much influence should government agencies exert over public conversations? These questions become especially sensitive during moments of social unrest. Northern Ireland and renewed scrutiny. Recent disturbances in Northern Ireland brought these issues back into public focus. The unrest followed a violent incident that generated widespread public concern and intense media coverage. As details emerged regarding the suspect and circumstances surrounding the case, emotions escalated rapidly. Protests began forming. Some demonstrations remained peaceful, others descended into violence. Police faced difficult operational challenges as crowds gathered and tensions intensified. At the same time, social media platforms became battlegrounds for competing interpretations of events. Supporters of stricter immigration policies argued that the incident highlighted broader concerns about border controls and asylum policies. Others warned against collective blame and cautioned that inflammatory rhetoric could fuel hostility toward immigrant communities. As narratives spread online, authorities monitored developments closely. Reports and claims subsequently emerged suggesting that communications specialists were providing guidance aimed at reducing escalation and influencing how events were publicly framed. Those allegations reignited debate about RICU's role. For critics, the controversy reinforced long-standing concerns that government communication strategies sometimes focus more on shaping perceptions than addressing underlying grievances. For supporters, such interventions represented responsible efforts to prevent violence and maintain social stability. The disagreement reflects a deeper divide over how governments should respond during periods of heightened public emotion. Should authorities actively attempt to influence narratives to reduce tensions, or should they focus exclusively on presenting facts and allowing public debate to develop organically? The answer remains fiercely contested.